The room was thick with tension. Cameras circled like hungry vultures, capturing every flicker of emotion. It was a historic summit. Leaders from across the globe gathered to discuss peace, justice, and change. But beneath the polished speeches and smiles, a silent battle brewed. Ibrahim Traoré, young yet fiercely determined, sat across from Joe Biden. The American president's eyes flickered with impatience. Every word Traoré spoke cut through layers of old politics and empty promises. Suddenly, Biden raised his hand, signaling he wanted to end Traoré's speech. The room held its breath. What was meant to be a respectful dialogue was spiraling into a clash of wills. No one knew then that what happened next would shake the world and leave millions watching in stunned silence, their hearts pounding, their hopes trembling. As Traoré's voice grew louder, filled with truth and pain, Biden tried to cut him off. "We've heard enough," Biden said sharply, attempting to regain control. But Ibrahim didn't flinch. The words coming from his lips were not just for the room. They were for the millions who had suffered in silence, for the forgotten faces in villages and cities, for those crushed by war and injustice. The camera zoomed in on his steady gaze, unwavering and raw. The crowd shifted, unsure whether to applaud or to silence him forcibly. But Traoré wasn't done. His heart was pounding, every word a testament to resilience and hope. And in that fragile moment, something inside the room changed, a silent promise that no voice of truth could be easily muted. Traoré took a deep breath, his eyes scanning the room, then the cameras, then the world beyond. "You may try to stop me," he said calmly, "but the stories of my people cannot be silenced." His voice cracked, not from fear, but from the weight of the lives behind his words. He spoke of mothers who buried their children, of soldiers who fought not for power but for peace, of a generation ready to rewrite their future. The room fell utterly silent. Tears shimmered in eyes that rarely showed emotion. People leaned forward, caught in a moment where history was being made. No longer was this a simple political talk. It was a human cry, a call for justice, for dignity, for hope. And when Traoré finished, the entire room stood, not out of obligation, but in awe. The room was filled with an unspoken energy, like the calm before a storm. Cameras captured every subtle expression. Some faces softened, others clenched their jaws in silent conflict. Joe Biden's attempt to silence Ibrahim Traoré had failed, but the tension hadn't disappeared. Instead, it thickened, like fog settling over a battlefield. Outside, millions watched live, hearts pounding in unison. Social media exploded with disbelief and hope. Traoré's courage wasn't just a statement, it was a challenge to decades of silence and complacency. Somewhere deep inside, everyone felt it. A chance for real change was no longer just a dream. But change always comes with a price. Ibrahim's voice softened as he spoke next. "My words are not mine alone. They carry the weight of ancestors who dreamed of freedom, of children who deserve better, and of a future we must build together." His eyes glistened with tears, not of weakness, but of fierce love for his people. Memories of his own childhood flooded back, the dusty roads, the hungry nights, the hopeful mornings. The room seemed to hold its breath, sensing the deep personal sacrifice behind his bravery. For Ibrahim, this wasn't just a speech, it was a promise made long ago, a vow that no silence would bury truth again. As Traoré's words settled in the room, a ripple spread beyond its walls. News outlets scrambled to capture the moment, while people from every corner of the world shared clips, translating his speech into languages spoken thousands of miles away. What started as a local dispute had become a global awakening. Families gathered around TVs, tears streaming down faces, feeling seen and heard for the first time. Young activists lit candles in quiet streets, inspired to fight on. And in that moment, Traoré was no longer just a man standing before a room. He was a beacon of hope, a symbol that courage can break barriers and ignite change. After the applause faded, the room seemed to hold its breath again. Joe Biden sat quietly, eyes fixed on Traoré with a mix of respect and something harder to read. No one interrupted. The silence wasn't empty. It was heavy, full of meaning. It was as if everyone was waiting for the next move, unsure if the fragile moment of unity would hold or shatter. Traoré remained calm, his heart pounding inside his chest like a steady drumbeat of determination. This was more than politics now. It was about human dignity and the courage to stand for what's right, even when the whole world tries to shut you down. Just when the tension seemed unbearable, a voice rose from the crowd, a respected elder diplomat known for his quiet wisdom. "Ibrahim speaks the truth," he said, his voice steady and clear. The room shifted. Others nodded. Suddenly the atmosphere changed from confrontation to conversation. The power of one brave man's words had broken through layers of hesitation and fear. It reminded everyone present and watching that courage is contagious. Traoré's message was no longer his alone. It had become a call that many were ready to answer. As the summit continued, cameras focused on the faces in the room, faces touched by hope, regret, and newfound determination. Traoré's story wasn't just political rhetoric anymore. It was a window into real lives. Mothers who lost sons in forgotten wars. Children denied education. Families torn apart by corruption. Each story echoed in Traoré's voice. Each tear he shed carried their pain. Viewers around the world began to understand that this wasn't a distant conflict, but a shared human struggle. And in that shared struggle, they found something powerful: connection. Later that night, alone in his hotel room, Ibrahim sat quietly, the weight of the day crashing down. The applause, the tension, the tears, they all echoed in his mind. He thought of his family back home, his mother who raised him with stories of resilience, his younger sister dreaming of becoming a doctor, the friends lost to violence and silence. Speaking out had always been a risk, but silence was a greater danger. Ibrahim knew the road ahead would be difficult. Threats, criticism, loneliness. But his heart wouldn't let him stop. This moment was bigger than politics. It was a lifeline to those who had no voice. As dawn broke, the world reacted. Videos of Ibrahim's speech spread like wildfire. Social media exploded with support, but also fierce debate. Some called him a hero, others feared his boldness. But the overwhelming message was clear. People wanted change, and they saw in Ibrahim a symbol of courage and hope. Letters poured in. Stories from parents, teachers, soldiers, all inspired by his words. One letter stood out. A mother from a distant country wrote about how her child, once hopeless, found strength listening to Ibrahim's voice. The power of words was changing lives. But with hope came resistance. Political forces uncomfortable with change started pushing back. Media outlets questioned Ibrahim's motives. Old rivals whispered threats. His phone buzzed with warnings. Yet his resolve only grew stronger. That evening, in a quiet call with his closest advisor, Ibrahim said, "If speaking the truth puts me in danger, so be it. But I will never let fear silence me or the millions who believe in a better tomorrow." The weight of leadership pressed heavily, but his spirit burned brighter than ever. In the days that followed, something extraordinary happened. Ordinary people began to rise in support of Ibrahim. From bustling cities to quiet villages, voices joined together, sharing stories of pain and hope. A group of school children held a vigil, lighting candles to honor those forgotten by history. A young soldier wrote an open letter praising Ibrahim's bravery. Even some former critics started to listen, moved by the honesty and compassion in his words. The world was waking up, and Ibrahim's courage was the spark. It was no longer just one man's fight. It was a collective heartbeat demanding change. Yet beneath the growing wave of support, Ibrahim faced his darkest night. Alone in a quiet room, doubt crept in like a shadow. "Am I enough?" he whispered to himself. "Can my words really change the world?" Memories of loss and struggle threatened to overwhelm him. But then, he thought of the faces counting on him. The mother who lost her son, the child dreaming of a future, the countless silent voices. With a deep breath, he reminded himself why he started this journey. Not for fame or power, but for truth, hope, and love. And with that, his resolve was reborn stronger than ever. The next day, Ibrahim returned to the summit, greeted by respectful nods and cautious smiles. His final speech was not just heard, it was felt. He spoke not only of problems, but of solutions, unity, and healing. The room that had once been tense now buzzed with possibility. When he finished, the applause was thunderous. People weren't just clapping for a leader, they were honoring a man who dared to dream of a better world and fought to make it real. That moment marked a turning point, not just for Ibrahim, but for everyone watching. Change was no longer distant. It was happening here, now. Just as hope seemed to bloom, the summit's final debate began. Joe Biden rose again, his voice steady but firm. "Ibrahim, your words inspire, but change must come with careful planning." The room grew silent. Everyone knew this was the final test, whether courage alone could shift decades of politics. Ibrahim stood tall, heart pounding but steady. He didn't respond with anger or defiance. Instead, with quiet strength, he said, "True change demands courage and honesty. Without them, plans become empty promises." The tension in the room was electric. No one spoke. Then, slowly, the room began to rise. Not because of pressure, but out of deep respect for a man who dared to speak the truth, even when the world tried to stop him. As the crowd stood, cameras caught something rare. Tears streaming down faces of leaders, journalists, and ordinary people alike. It was a moment of pure humanity, where politics faded and shared dreams took center stage. Ibrahim's final words weren't just a speech. They were a lifeline for millions who had suffered in silence. The summit ended with a promise: to listen, to act, and to never forget. For Ibrahim, it wasn't the applause or the headlines. It was knowing that one voice, when brave enough, can awaken the world. And in that moment, everything changed forever. Months later, Ibrahim stood outside his hometown, greeted by cheers, tears, and open arms. Children waved handmade signs. Elders smiled with pride. The world had watched a man stand up, refuse to be silenced, and speak for those who couldn't. His journey was far from over, but the seed of change had been planted deeply in hearts worldwide. As the sun set, Ibrahim looked up, whispering a promise to the future. This is just the beginning. If this story moved you, if you felt the courage, the hope, and the tears, please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts below. Your voice matters, just like Ibrahim's. Together, we can keep the hope alive and build a better tomorrow. Don't forget to comment your feelings. Let's start a conversation that changes the world.